The castle walls trembled as a furious wind roared through the midnight corridors, carrying with it the echo of a distant bell that tolled like a warning from the heavens. Evelina pressed her hand against the cold stone, her breath sharp as she whispered, "This night is cursed." Suddenly, a hidden door at the end of the hall swung open with a violent crack, revealing a shadowed chamber she had never dared to enter. Within, a cloaked figure murmured secrets that felt as heavy as chains, words that struck her heart with betrayal she could scarcely bear. Evelina's chest tightened as she gasped, realizing the voice belonged to Cedric, her most trusted councilor. He said, "The kingdom shall fall, and the princess will bleed." Her trembling echoed the quivering torchlight, each flicker casting monstrous shapes on the stone walls. With every step she took forward, her heart fractured, her world unraveling before her very eyes. The narrator's voice carried the weight of grief as Evelina fled from the secret chamber, her slippers echoing across marble floors like the tolling of her doom. She whispered to herself, "How could Cedric betray me?" Her heart thundered against her ribs, each beat more painful than the last. Shadows stretched along the corridor as if mocking her, twisting into cruel shapes that seemed to whisper doubts into her ears. She remembered her father's kind smile, her mother's gentle touch, both now threatened by this dark revelation. Evelina stumbled into the moonlit courtyard, clutching her pendant tightly. The night air bit into her skin, sharp and cold as betrayal itself. "I must be strong," she said, though her voice cracked. Yet strength felt hollow when the world she trusted crumbled into shards of lies, each cutting deeper than the last. The garden beyond the courtyard smelled of roses, yet Evelina tasted only ashes in her throat. She walked among the blossoms, her hand brushing petals that crumbled at her touch, as though the flowers themselves betrayed her. Her thoughts swirled like a storm. Cedric was father's most loyal counselor. How long has he conspired against us? She asked the silent air. The statues of past rulers loomed, their stone faces frozen in judgment, their shadows heavy upon her. She collapsed onto a stone bench, trembling, her chest heaving with broken sobs. The night seemed alive with whispers, cruel voices riding the wind. Evelina lifted her tear-streaked face to the heavens, her voice breaking. "Why must I carry this curse of betrayal?" But only silence answered her, as the stars hid behind gathering clouds. Rowan found Evelina in the garden, his footsteps halting at the sight of her trembling frame. He knelt before her, his voice thick with worry. "Evelina, why do you weep?" Evelina's throat burned, but she managed. "Cedric, he plots against us." Rowan's eyes widened, shock and fury carving his features. "Cedric, the man your father trusted above all." Evelina nodded, tears spilling unchecked. "I heard his words. He said I must bleed." Rowan clasped her hand firmly, warmth grounding her broken spirit. "Then he will not succeed," he vowed, his voice steady, though his breath quivered. In that moment, Evelina felt a fragile strength return, anchored by Rowan's loyalty. The night seemed less cruel with his presence beside her. The night deepened as Rowan guided Evelina back toward the inner hall, their steps echoing against stone like the beat of an anxious heart. Evelina whispered, "If Cedric conspires, then others may already stand with him." Rowan's jaw tightened. "We must warn your father," he urged. But Evelina shook her head. "Not yet. If Cedric has acted so boldly, the king may already be ensnared." The torches flared violently as they passed under arches, shadows writhing across walls like dark hands reaching for them. Evelina's voice faltered. "I fear the betrayal runs deeper than we know." Rowan stood closer, his stance protective, his eyes scanning each corner. The castle loomed before them, its towers looming like grim sentinels guarding deadly secrets. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, scattering colors across the throne room like fractured jewels. Evelina stood before her father, King Aldrich, her voice trembling as she said, "We are not safe, father." The king's stern gaze softened, though shadows lingered in his weary eyes. "Evelina, fear clouds judgment," he replied, but she shook her head firmly. "Cedric has betrayed us. I heard his words with my own ears." Silence thickened in the chamber, broken only by Rowan's voice. "My king, I saw her grief, and I believe her." Aldrich pressed a hand to his temple, torn between love and duty. Outside the court whispered rumors, their words like daggers carried on the wind. Evelina clenched her fists, her heart pounding. Her truth lay bare, but doubt wrapped around her like a curse. Court councilors gathered like vultures, their eyes sharp with suspicion, as Evelina entered the council chamber. Cedric stood among them, his hood discarded, expression calm yet hiding venom. He said, "The princess is troubled by night terrors." Murmurs rippled through the council, doubt clouding their judgment. Evelina's voice cracked as she declared, "I know what I heard." But Cedric countered smoothly, "Words are twisted in dreams, my lady." Anger flared in Rowan's eyes, but the king's hand held him back. Evelina's chest tightened, betrayal cutting deeper with each dismissive glance from those sworn to protect her. She realized Cedric had planted seeds of mistrust long before this night. Now, those seeds bloomed like thorns in her path, binding her in isolation. Later that evening, Evelina retreated to her chamber, the silence broken only by the restless crackle of the fireplace. She collapsed onto her bed, burying her face in silk pillows dampened by tears. "No one believes me," she whispered. Rowan entered quietly, his brow furrowed with worry. He knelt beside her saying, "I believe you, Evelina, and I will not leave your side." She lifted her eyes, green and swollen with sorrow, to meet his earnest gaze. The firelight flickered, softening his features, painting the air with fragile warmth. For a fleeting moment, Evelina felt safe. Yet deep within, her fear coiled tighter. If Cedric's lies reached deeper than the court, then her father's throne stood on the edge of ruin, and she upon the edge of despair. The next day, Evelina's mentor, Lady Seraphine, entered the library where dust motes swirled in shafts of sunlight. A woman of wisdom and age, she carried ancient tomes in her frail arms. She said, "Child, truth is a fragile flame. Guard it well, or shadows will consume it." Evelina whispered, "How do I fight shadows that wear trusted faces?" Seraphine placed a hand upon her shoulder, her lined eyes heavy with secrets. "The answer lies in courage, not in fear," she said softly. Evelina straightened, her resolve gathering like storm clouds. For the first time since Cedric's betrayal, she felt her strength kindle, faint but burning. Seraphine's presence was a balm, yet her cryptic words suggested burdens even greater waiting in the dark. Night returned heavy with dread as Evelina walked the battlements, the wind cold against her cheeks. Rowan followed at her side, silent but steadfast. Evelina's gaze swept over the kingdom she loved, her voice breaking. "How can I protect them when even my own court turns against me?" Rowan answered, "By holding fast to what is true." Evelina clutched her pendant, its golden surface catching moonlight. "If I fall, they fall with me," she whispered. A raven shrieked in the distance, carrying an omen across the dark sky. Evelina's heart ached with both fear and determination, knowing her burden was heavier than ever. Still, as Rowan's hand brushed hers in wordless support, she felt a fragile spark of hope ignite within. The great hall brimmed with nobles, their jeweled cloaks rustling like restless wings as whispers filled the air. Evelina entered with Rowan at her side, her spine rigid though her heart trembled. Cedric bowed low before the court, his silver tongue dripping poison. "Our princess is blinded by fear," he said, his eyes sliding toward her with feigned pity. Evelina forced her voice steady, declaring, "I stand only for truth, not fear." Murmurs grew louder, some eyes hard with doubt, while others softened in sympathy. Rowan stepped forward, fists clenched, his presence protective. Yet Evelina knew Cedric's lies wrapped the hall like a net, drawing her deeper into isolation. Each noble's glance weighed her down, as though chains of suspicion bound her every breath. Later, in the palace gardens, Evelina walked among marble statues with Rowan trailing closely. She whispered, "Their eyes burn with doubt. Cedric has turned them against me." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Then we must show them his true face." Evelina's gaze dropped to her pendant, its glow dulled by shadows. "But how when every word he speaks drips with honey?" she asked, despair in her tone. A raven landed upon a statue, its black eyes fixed on her as though mocking her weakness. Evelina's shoulders sagged under the weight of mistrust. Rowan reached for her hand, steady and warm. "You are stronger than his lies," he said, though doubt flickered in his own eyes, betraying the fear he could not speak aloud. In the council library, Cedric stood with a small circle of nobles, his voice smooth as velvet. "The king grows weaker each day, and the princess dreams of shadows," he whispered. A noble asked, "And if she is unfit?" Cedric's lips curved in a sly smile. "Then we must guide her, or replace her." Evelina, hidden behind a towering shelf, pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Every word sank like a dagger into her chest. Cedric's betrayal deepened, and the walls of trust around her kingdom crumbled further. Evelina's heart thundered with both fury and despair, knowing she could not yet reveal herself. For in that moment, her silence was the only weapon she still held. That night, Evelina met Lady Seraphine in the tower chamber, moonlight pouring through arched windows. Evelina's voice trembled. "Cedric weaves lies so thick, I fear even father cannot see truth." Seraphine's eyes were grave as she laid a scroll upon the table. "This kingdom was cursed long before Cedric's treachery," she murmured. Evelina's breath caught. "A curse?" Seraphine nodded slowly. "A shadow in bloodlines bound to betray." Evelina's chest constricted, the words echoing like prophecy. Rowan shifted uneasily in the corner, silent but alert. Evelina's heart wavered between fear and defiance. If betrayal was fated, could she ever escape its thorned path? Or was Cedric merely the first of many daggers poised against her soul? As storm clouds gathered, Evelina stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom, the winds tearing at her gown and hair. Rowan placed his hand on the railing beside hers, his voice steady. "You cannot fight this alone." Evelina's eyes burned with tears. "But who can I trust when betrayal blooms in every shadow?" A flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the towers in a blaze of white. Evelina clutched her pendant, whispering, "If I fall, the kingdom falls with me." Rowan's voice was fierce, though hushed. "Then I will not let you fall." Yet Evelina felt the storm was not only in the skies above, but also within her heart, ready to break the fragile world she still clung to. The night was heavy with mist as Evelina followed Lady Seraphine into the ancient crypt beneath the castle. Each step echoed, sounding like distant drums of fate. Evelina whispered, "Why bring me here?" Seraphine's voice was low, burdened. "Because the answers you seek are buried with the dead." Torches sputtered, shadows twisting into monstrous shapes across the stone coffins. Evelina shivered, her pendant glowing faintly, as though alive to the darkness. Rowan gripped his sword hilt tightly, his eyes darting warily into the depths. Seraphine stopped before an engraved sarcophagus, her expression grim. "This is where the first betrayal began." Evelina's breath faltered. The air smelled of dust and decay, but also of secrets too dangerous to remain hidden. Lady Seraphine traced trembling fingers across the sarcophagus, carved with runes that pulsed faintly. "This curse has lived in your bloodline for centuries," she said. Evelina's eyes widened, her voice cracking. "My blood carries betrayal?" Seraphine nodded gravely. "It is the burden of your crown." Rowan stepped forward sharply. "Then we break it." But Seraphine's face remained somber. "Curses demand sacrifice, not defiance." Evelina's stomach twisted as though snakes coiled inside. "If Cedric wields this curse, he already knows how to destroy me." Rowan's hand tightened on his sword, his face dark with fury. Evelina reached for the stone lid, but the runes flared brighter, sending shivers down her spine. The shadows whispered as if mocking her hope. As they left the crypt, a chilling wind swept through the courtyard, carrying whispers that seemed not of this world. Evelina clutched her pendant tightly, her voice unsteady. I hear them, Rowan. Voices calling my name. Rowan stepped closer, his presence a shield. They are lies meant to break you, he said firmly, though his eyes betrayed unease. Evelina closed her eyes, but the whispers only grew louder, like a chorus of ghosts clawing at her heart. Lady Seraphine raised her staff, murmuring ancient words that dimmed the voices for a moment. The shadows hunger for you, she warned. Evelina's breath came in short gasps. Each whisper pierced her like a thorn, weaving dread deeper into her soul. The council gathered again the following morning, Cedric standing at the center with commanding poise. His voice rang like iron. The princess is haunted, unfit to rule. Nobles murmured, nodding in fearful agreement. Evelina stood tall, though her heart quaked, her voice ringing clear. It is Cedric who weaves deception, not I. Cedric smiled coldly, replying, accusations without proof are but the cries of a frightened child. The court's gaze bore down on her, heavy with doubt. Rowan's voice cut through, steady as steel. She is no child. She is the kingdom's last hope. Cedric's eyes narrowed, shadows dancing across his face, as though even the light recoiled. Evelina felt the noose of politics tighten around her fragile truth. That night, Evelina returned to the battlements alone, the wind howling like wolves in mourning. She gripped the stone ledge, her tears swept away by the storm. If I am cursed, then I am already doomed, she whispered into the void. A sudden rustle broke the silence, and a hooded figure stepped from the shadows. Evelina's heart froze, as Cedric's voice coiled like smoke. Doomed, yes, but perhaps useful if you surrender. Evelina spun, her pendant blazing like fire against the night. You will never claim me, she declared, her voice trembling but fierce. Cedric's laughter echoed coldly before he melted back into the shadows, leaving Evelina alone with her pounding heart. The storm above raged, mirroring the war within her. The council gathered under torchlight, tension thick as smoke. Evelina stood before them, her heart hammering. She cried, Cedric plots treason. Gasps rippled through the nobles. Cedric smiled, calm as ever, and said, her grief blinds her judgment. The king's face was torn between trust and disbelief. Rowan stepped forward, his voice sharp. I swear upon my life. Her words are truth. Cedric's eyes gleamed with cold amusement. Truth is what we make it, he replied, his voice steady as steel. Evelina's knees weakened, but she stood firm, her pendant glowing faintly against her chest. The court erupted in whispers, the sound like the hiss of serpents, weaving doubt that strangled her every breath. That night, Evelina met Rowan in the stables, moonlight streaming through the wooden slats. Horses shifted nervously as if sensing danger. Evelina whispered, I cannot stay silent. Cedric's web grows tighter. Rowan gripped her hand, eyes burning with loyalty. Then we must act, even if the court denies us. Evelina leaned closer, her voice cracking. What if I fail? Rowan's voice softened, trembling. Then I fall with you. The moment lingered between fear and longing, hearts bound in silence. The sound of footsteps interrupted, and Evelina pulled away. In the shadows, a cloaked figure watched, eyes glittering like knives, bearing witness to their secret vow. The following morning, Cedric cornered Evelina in the cloister, his voice low, dripping with venom. You think your pendant protects you? It cannot shield you from destiny. Evelina met his gaze, her voice unsteady but fierce. My destiny is mine, not yours. Cedric smirked, stepping closer, shadows framing his sharp features. Your blood carries betrayal. You cannot escape it. Evelina's breath caught, her hand clutching the pendant until it seared her palm. Then, I will fight fate itself, she whispered. Cedric's cold laughter echoed through the arches, chilling her veins. For the first time, Evelina felt the full weight of his malice pressing down like a storm she could not outrun. That evening the court feasted, laughter and music masking treachery. Evelina sat stiffly at the king's side, her smile a fragile mask. Across the table, Cedric raised his goblet, his eyes fixed on her with mocking triumph. Rowan leaned close, murmuring, "He flaunts his power openly." Evelina whispered back, "Then we must strike when he least expects it." The hall's warmth felt suffocating, every laugh a dagger twisting in her chest. Cedric stood, voice carrying, "To our future, free of shadows." The nobles cheered, blind to his deceit. Evelina's nails dug into her palm, blood rising where her fist clenched. She vowed silently, the mask would fall tonight. The moment came in the courtyard, under torchlight. Evelina stood before Cedric, her voice ringing clear. "Your lies end tonight." Cedric laughed, drawing a dagger hidden in his cloak. Rowan stepped forward, sword flashing. "You will not touch her." Cedric's eyes gleamed with malice as he lunged. The clash of steel rang out, sparks flying in the dark. Evelina's pendant blazed with sudden light, forcing Cedric back. His hood slipped, revealing not only his cruel face, but the mark of the curse etched across his skin. Gasps echoed from the watching nobles, their doubt shattered at last. Evelina's voice broke, but did not waver. "The mask has fallen, and truth will claim you." The courtyard shook with chaos as Cedric rallied soldiers loyal to his treachery. Evelina stood at the center, pendant blazing with golden fire that defied the night. Rowan shouted, "Stand with the princess or stand with a traitor." Blades clashed, sparks scattering into the storm. Evelina's heart pounded as her father, King Aldrich, stumbled, his crown tilting in despair. "Daughter, hold strong," he murmured, his voice frail yet proud. Cedric's laugh pierced the turmoil, cold and sharp. "This kingdom will crumble with its cursed bloodline." Evelina raised her hand, light from the pendant spilling across the stone like dawn breaking. Fear and hope collided, and the storm raged within and without. Rain poured down in sheets as Evelina clashed with Cedric in the courtyard. His dagger gleamed wickedly under lightning's flash. Evelina gasped, "You will not take my crown." Cedric snarled, "It was never yours to keep." Rowan fought fiercely against traitors nearby, his blade cutting through the chaos. Lady Seraphine stood at the gate, chanting ancient words, her staff glowing with protective fire. The ground shook as crimson runes burned beneath Cedric's feet, dark magic writhing like serpents. Evelina's pendant flared brighter, resisting the curse. Cedric's smirk faltered, but his fury grew. Their duel was not only of steel, but of destiny itself, and the storm bore witness. Cedric unleashed a wave of dark power, the courtyard stones splitting under its force. Evelina was thrown back, crashing against the wall, her breath ragged. Rowan cried out, charging forward, but Cedric's hand crackled with crimson lightning, halting him. Evelina forced herself up, pendant burning her chest with searing light. "I am not your pawn," she screamed, her voice breaking through thunder. Seraphine's voice carried across the storm. "Use the light, child. It is stronger than you know." Evelina raised her hands, the pendant's fire surging outward, clashing against Cedric's darkness. The storm above mirrored their struggle, each strike of lightning echoing the clash of fate. The king collapsed to his knees, crown clattering to the stones. Evelina rushed toward him, but Cedric blocked her path, blade aimed at her heart. Rowan intercepted, steel clashing against Cedric's dagger in a shower of sparks. "Go your father," he roared. Evelina knelt beside Aldrich, her tears mixing with rain. "Father, hold on." His eyes, dim but proud, met hers. "The kingdom's hope lies in you." Cedric's fury broke into a roar as he hurled Rowan aside, raising his hand for the killing strike. Evelina's scream pierced the storm, her pendant flaring like a starburst. The force erupted, throwing Cedric back, shattering the chains of despair that bound her. Cedric staggered to his feet, fury twisting his face. "You cannot escape the curse," he spat. Evelina rose, soaked and trembling, but her voice rang steady. "The curse ends with me." She raised the pendant high, its golden blaze cutting through the storm. Cedric lunged, his dagger flashing, but Rowan struck his blade aside with a cry of defiance. Seraphine's chant reached its climax, runes burning out beneath Cedric's feet. Evelina's pendant burst into a blinding wave, light and thunder entwined. Cedric screamed as shadows ripped from his body, dissolving into ash. Silence followed, broken only by rain. Evelina stood gasping, knowing the storm was not yet over, but the reckoning had begun. The storm eased into silence, rain falling in gentle streams across the ruined courtyard. Evelina stood trembling, pendant dimmed to a faint glow. Rowan approached, sword lowered, his eyes filled with both relief and sorrow. "It is over," he whispered. Evelina's gaze shifted to Cedric's ashes, scattered like shadows, erased by dawn. "No," she murmured. "The wound he opened will never truly close." King Aldrich struggled to his feet, his crown bent and robes soaked, his voice hoarse but firm. "Daughter, you carried the kingdom when I could not." Evelina bowed her head, her heart heavy. Though victory was hers, the cost echoed louder than triumph. The nobles gathered slowly, their faces pale, their whispers subdued. Evelina stood tall despite exhaustion, her voice steady. "You doubted me, but truth cannot be silenced." A murmur of shame swept through the court as they bowed their heads. Rowan placed his hand over his heart, declaring, "The princess has carried us all." Seraphine's eyes glimmered with both pride and sorrow. "The curse is broken, but every curse leaves scars." Evelina lifted her chin, her gaze burning with fragile strength. For the first time, the nobles saw not just a daughter, but a queen rising from Betrayal's thorns. Inside the throne room, Aldrich leaned heavily upon his throne, his strength failing. Evelina knelt before him, her voice shaking. "Father, rest now. I will guard the crown." His trembling hand touched her cheek. "The kingdom is yours to heal." Rowan stood silently by her side, his presence unwavering. Aldrich's crown slipped from his grasp, falling into Evelina's hands. She held it close, her tears glistening like jewels in the candlelight. The hall was silent, each noble watching as a new chapter began. Evelina rose, not as the cursed daughter, but as the heir who had endured Betrayal's fire. That night, Evelina walked alone in the royal gardens, the roses heavy with rain. She traced her fingers across a single bloom, whispering, "Even beauty hides thorns." Rowan appeared quietly, his voice soft. "Yet you have shown that even thorns can guard the heart." Evelina turned, her eyes glistening. "I fear I will never be free of the shadows." "One." Rowan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Then let me walk with you through them." For a moment, the storm of her heart eased, not erased, but steadied by his loyalty. The garden was still, holding its breath as hope and grief twined together like vines. At dawn, Evelina stood on the balcony, the kingdom stretching before her under rising sun. The pendant glowed faintly, one last time before dimming forever. She whispered, "The curse is broken, but its memory remains." Rowan stood at her side, silent strength in his presence. Behind them, the nobles gathered, kneeling in recognition of their new queen. Evelina lifted her chin, her eyes fixed on the horizon where storm clouds slowly parted. "The thorns of betrayal will not bind me," she declared softly. The wind carried her words across the land, a vow and a warning. The story closed not with peace, but with the promise of resilience.